Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Archaeo Soup Towers on New Year's Eve. Tomorrow will be 2021, and we will have left behind, jettisoned, what fairly unanimously is considered to be a bit of a dumpster fire of a year in 2020. It had an alluring name, a pleasing, alliterative, numerically alliterative name, 2020, but it had some things happen on a global scale, and certainly some things have happened here at Archaeo Soup Towers towards the end of that year that most of us would rather not have happened. And I'll come back to that at the very end of this video. But all of this kind of makes me think that we shouldn't be in too much of a hurry to pack away 2020 and put it on a shelf somewhere and forget about it. Because, like it or not, tendrils of that year will work their way into next year. They will affect us, whether we acknowledge it or not. And in some ways, this relationship between the past, the present, and the future is at the heart of what interests archaeologists. How do living environments go from being alive to being, even prehistoric environments? This process and this connection, nonetheless, is the stuff of archaeology. And it's times like this that I'm reminded that January is named after Janus, a Roman two-faced god looking backwards and forwards at the same time. And I think there's wisdom in that actually I think archaeologists could do well to remember and to remind the public at large of. This also coincides with the latest in a long line of studies from astrophysicists that was published earlier this month that claimed that the galaxy is likely crammed with civilizations that have peaked and then collapsed. This cycle of a golden age, which actually I've talked about in a previous video on this channel. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. Golden ages followed by decline and inevitable collapse is seen as something that is final and also a limiting factor in terms of our ability to potentially communicate with other intelligent beings in this universe. And yet, even though, if, for example, in the article that I'll link to below, comparisons are made to the Roman Empire collapsing and other well-known civilizations declining, actually the ongoing story of archaeology is continuum. It is continuation. Arguably, the Roman influence continued through the Eastern Empire, through what became, for example, the Russian Tsars. The symbol of the Tsar's power was actually a Roman symbol in terms of empire. In Europe, you had Kaiser, Caesar, and arguably even some of the foundations of the Holy Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church, current and sort of later medieval monarchies kind of touched on Rome as a jumping off point for their own power, and in turn we live in that now. We live in a world that was touched by that. So this idea that the Roman Empire ended, the closer you look at it, the more you have to ask, what did it? I'm not sure it did. It evolved, it changed, it moved on. And in the notes that I made about this, I sort of asked the question, are we stymied, essentially, by a pessimistic outlook on fate? This idea of, rapture, Ragnarok, the end of things, the cycle of destruction and rebirth that we think of as being expressed in absolutes, and that we somehow also, not only culturally but also I think academically, pass on to others in the form of, for example, astrophysicists thinking, oh no, well, the galaxy is just full of dead civilizations, they'll never be able to contact us again. In our case, if you talk about the Roman cycle, that was less than 1,000 years, and less than 2,000 years after that, here we are. So it's interesting, isn't it, how we relate to the past and how we think of the past as being boxed away filed away and not really relevant to how we are living today, directly affects how we think of other civilizations, other possibilities, the future indeed, as being distinct from it, and therefore I would say that's a flawed model. To compartmentalize then, now, and the future as discrete, separate portions of time is not only culturally specific. Within humanity, there are lots of groups who view time in different ways. Perhaps it's biologically specific as well in terms of how we experience time on this planet. But it also has the result of defining and limiting how we characterize ourselves, other life in the universe, but also, I suppose, ourselves into the future. It's not necessarily helpful, or indeed, as I say, true when we look at the long story, the constant flow of ideas, people, life, and possibilities that we see in the archaeological record. It's a cycle. There are ebbs and flows, but it continues. It's never really been snapped off and broken. And so, as much as we culturally, like it or not, live in a society that is sort of obsessed with end times, as a sort of as a society that's certainly been affected by Christian ideas, or if you want to go further back, like I say, Viking ideas, Ragnarok, etc. We have that in the back of our minds. Are we living in the end days? Will this be, I suppose the current expression of that would be the apocalypse? Is the apocalypse coming? As much as we frequently tend to think in that way, it's never been shown to be the case. So, one day, the pandemic will be behind us. Vaccines are already here, and more people are getting them every day. The desire to see loved ones, friends and family. We, for example, didn't have our typical Christmas gathering this year. Music venues, sporting events, all these things will draw us back towards something more recognisable as a way of life. But I wonder, what will we carry with us from what has been a very difficult year into the near future? In that Janus-like way, looking back, what will we take with us as we look forward? Pain and regret, probably, for many people. Hopefully lessons learned. Hopefully. Goodness me, I really hope so. Those meetings that were forced upon us, Zoom, Skype, Teams. There's an app called Starleaf as well that Mrs. Soup was having to use this year. These things that at times were extremely frustrating because it was our only option may well become a bit of a luxury when it's not our only option. Perhaps we don't have to travel the length of the country to go to that one meeting in London or something like that. Maybe these digital solutions, now that they're more readily tested and usable and on more people's computers, will become a little bit more normal. Maybe that's a good thing. Hopefully, though, we don't have to treasure and collect toilet roll in the same way as we did in March 2020 ever again, or for a while at least. But these are the thoughts that I cannot help but have as we enter a new year. As an archaeologist, I'm aware of that ongoing story, despite the popular notion of golden age and final crash landings for some civilizations. Actually, the story is more of a river. The golden age is only ever golden for some, not everyone, and the crash only ever really affects a limited number of people. Life continues, society continues, ideas continue to be passed on, and these moments, these arbitrary, let's face it, arbitrary transitions, we've decided that this is a new year that we're entering, are wonderful moments and opportunities to think about how we relate to the past, and how that in turn frames how we see the potential for the future, and indeed even for other civilizations on far-flung planets in our galaxy. So that's what's been floating around in my head for the past couple of days, and hopefully these have been interesting, if not useful, end-of-year reflections for you. for Mrs. Soup and for me, the past couple of months have been extraordinarily difficult. She had surgery, our dog has had surgery, a good friend of ours was horribly wounded because of something that I was doing. It wasn't my fault, but she was injured, and that was a horrible thing to witness and to try and get it, to reconcile with all that other stuff going on. So it's been difficult, but also we've managed to rescue some festive light and warmth as well. We've had a wonderful Christmas through to New Year kind of period, Twixtmas time. We've actually ended up sorting swathes of the house that previously we either didn't quite have time for. Ironically enough, actually, because normally family would be here at this time of year. That's interesting, isn't it? So as part of her recovery, little acts of lifting and moving, gentle exercise, we've actually been able to sort a couple of, several cupboards, if not a couple of rooms worth of stuff in this house. So that's quite nice. So it's the small things that we're grateful for this year, I think, and also fundamentally grateful for what we do have, for who we are. For our ability to reach out to friends and family, even though we can't physically be with them. It's been, in that sense, stressful, but there've been lovely moments within the past couple of months, and hopefully it's been similar for you guys as well. And I guess as we look forward to the new year, all that remains for me to say is a great big happy new year to you. And for my part, if I'm honest, I have been slapped so hard in the face by the past couple of months that my morale for making new videos was slightly stymied as well. But I've got some plans. So in January, I'm hoping to have a few interviews with friends or with interesting colleagues that will be relatively easy to make, but also hopefully interesting and start us off in the new year and build us up to a pace where I'll be back up to speed, as it were, by the end of the month. So slow but steady, progress continues, the story never ends. As I say, guys, merry new year. Hopefully you've had a merry Christmas, happy new year, and I'll see you in 2021. Bye bye.